The following is a production of Medfield TV.
Hi, my name is Lucille Fisher. Welcome to Our Town, Our Land, Our Future. This is a show brought to you by Medfield TV and the Medfield State Hospital Master Planning Committee to keep you up to date on what is happening with the former Medfield State Hospital land. So today I have with me Steve Nolan, who is the chairman of the Medfield State Hospital Master Plan Committee. So thanks, Steve, for coming.
Happy to be here.
Steve had to come all the way from Boston to get here from work. So anyway, I want you to tell our audience a little bit about you, Steve, like how long you've lived in town and your professional background, and give them a little idea.
Okay, sure. As Lucille said, my name is Steve Nolan. I'm a real estate attorney. I moved to town in 1986, so been here just about 30 years now. I practice principally in the areas of affordable housing and community development, specializing in tax credits. We do a lot of low-income housing tax credit, new markets tax credit, historic tax credit work, so that's my professional background.
Okay, and you are married and...
I'm married. My wife Marie is pretty active in town as well, and we have 3 sons. Oldest Zachary, middle son Jared, youngest son Elliot, all came up through the Medfield school systems, and they're all out of the nest now, so they're off doing other things in other parts of the country.
So Steve, I know that you are very active in town. So not only are you the chairman of the Medfield State Hospital Master Plan Committee, but there's other committees that you're involved with. So tell us some of the other committees you are either currently involved with or have been involved with in the past.
Well, it started a while back. I ran for the planning board many years ago, and I lost the election, but a vacancy came up on the board shortly after that, and the selectmen appointed me to fill the balance of someone else's term. So that's when I started. I also was active with the Medfield Community Development Corporation, which built the Allendale development on Dale Street. And then I got appointed after I stepped down from the planning board, which was a tremendous amount of work. So after I finished that term, I couldn't keep going. It was just a relentless amount of work. But a few years later, the selectmen appointed me to the zoning board. So I've been on the zoning board for at least 20 years now. And at this point, I'm the chair of the zoning board as well. I've also been on the Affordable Housing Committee, which is in charge of sort of reviewing affordable housing projects that want to come into town. And then most recently I was appointed to the State Hospital Advisory Committee, I guess it was called, and we were charged by the selectmen with studying the property and deciding whether the town wanted to acquire the property, which the town then did. And after that, the selectmen appointed me to the Master Planning Committee. So I think that's pretty much everything.
long history of volunteering for the town.
Yes.
Yeah. So why did you want to be on the Master Planning Committee?
Well, I didn't actually ask to be on it. The selectmen asked me if I would be on it, so I agreed. I mean, I think it's a combination of my experience with zoning, my real estate knowledge, my participation in other town boards, So a lot of different aspects of my professional and volunteer life kind of came together and seemed to have a possible relevance to the hospital planning. So I think at least that's my impression of why I'm on the committee. So.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good guess. Just a very valuable background.
Right.
So you give a lot to the town. So what is it that makes you volunteer so much, and what's your motivation to do so?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I've ever been self-reflective enough to really figure out what my true motivations are. I mean, I feel like it's important to participate as a citizen.
Yeah.
I feel like Medfield's a great town, and I've gotten a lot out of living here. My family's gotten a lot out of living here. So for me, it seems logical that the town doesn't work well unless everybody steps to the plate and tries to do their share. So, different people have different roles. Some people are, coach children's sports teams. Some people, participate in town government. Some people participate in town charities, whatever it is.
Right.
But I think the strength of our community, in my mind, has always been how many people do participate. So, I mean, I do participate a lot, but I think a lot of other people do as well. So. For me, it's just a matter of trying to give back and make community better as a whole for everybody who lives here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that, so many people in town do volunteer. I think volunteering is so important, and certainly how I grew up in my family, my dad was always volunteering. So I kind of caught that bug too. So, but it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good bug to catch.
Good thing for the community.
All right.
So tell me a little bit about the Master Planning Committee, about how many members there are, and then I know there's resource members too. So give me just a little overview.
Well, full members, the committee was originally formed with 9, and we're short a member now. We have a vacancy, so there are currently 8 members on the full committee. There were a lot of people who have participated in various planning aspects and things with respect to the hospital property, and I think the selectmen decided that it would be good to sort of give them some formal status, and that I think is the origin of the resource members, and there are, I think, 8 resource members at this point. And they have been, I mean, as far as the level of effort, they've become almost indistinguishable from members of the committee. They put in, as much time and effort as everybody else. So it's a strong group. It's a great group. So. And we're in the process of thinking about who to nominate to the selectmen or recommend to the selectmen to fill out our last spot. So if there's anybody out there who wants to participate, feel free to let us know or let the selectmen know.
So it is a good-sized group, and it's a very, like you said, it's a very active group. People are really working hard. So you have this robust group of very talented volunteers. So as the chairman, what is your philosophy in kind of guiding, the process or the committee itself?
Well, in some respects, I think the committee's a microcosm for the community as a whole, and one thing that we are acutely aware of is that anything we do requires a 2/3 vote to approve the zoning at town meeting and a majority to approve any kind of disposition if that were where we ended up. So it seemed to me at the outset that it was going to be important to have a pretty broad consensus in the community, and therefore a pretty broad consensus on the committee as well. So I've tried to take a light hand as far as running the committee, if you will, and more guide people and try to elicit a lot of participation by everybody. So there are a lot of ideas. As you said, it's an incredibly talented group and an incredibly hardworking group. I think of all the committees I've ever served on, professional and otherwise, it's been the most amazing because people have rolled up their sleeves and put in enormous amounts of time. So to me, that's been really gratifying, and it's allowed us to get as far as we have. So so I feel like steering, guiding are the operative words, and not trying to impose any particular view, because there's just a lot to learn from the different members of the committee. So
I mean, it's a huge task that the committee has been given.
yeah.
And then there's a lot that's going to go in, that goes into the decision. So I guess the more input that you get, you know, the better
Yeah.
for everybody.
I mean, I really think that it's going to take some compromise and give and take. So I think the more input we get, the more different voices we hear, the more able we are to address concerns. So.
Yeah, I think that's it right there. You know, is input is important. So, what are some of the you said the committee? Everybody's rolling up their sleeves and you know, really working hard. So, what are some of the unique efforts that have come out of the master planning committee that maybe has surprised you, or you know, that it's just kind of just different?
Well, I would say two things immediately come to mind. One is the Catalyst committee, subcommittee. We got a lot of input early on with people saying, well, we just don't want this to be a big housing development or big anything, really. We'd like it to be something different, unique, something that really contributes to the quality of the town. So on the other hand, the market studies and things that we got from different consultants all said, well, the only good use up there is housing. So we realized right then that it was going to be a bit of a struggle because the other unique things weren't going to fall into our lap. So a subcommittee was formed to try and do a bunch of outreach. And it's not just this one group, it's a little bit fluid because people are really trying to use their contacts, so different people may participate in different meetings. But we've really tried to reach out to different types of users to try to stimulate interest in the site and educate ourselves about what other ideas there might be out there for use of the site. So that I think was a really creative thing. Originally some of the consultants were referring to it as the lightning strike, and somebody on the committee, I can't remember who it was, maybe Gil, who said, it's not, lightning strike's a bad way to refer to it because lightning strikes happen to you.
Yeah.
And so the idea of the Catalyst group was to go out and catalyze something.
So more proactive.
Definitely more proactive. The other thing is just the communications group, which you're a part of, and that to me has been just overwhelmingly positive because I always struggle with how do you get people to participate, and a lot of people don't want to come out in the evening and go to a meeting. I mean, frankly, I prefer a night at home too, so it's not, I mean, I understand that reaction. They may have kids, they may have other commitments. So reaching out to them in different and creative ways, I think, has been just incredible. So, the Facebook, the email blasts that go out regularly and people sign up, the surveys, all that effort has just reached a huge number of people, and so many people are now interested and engaged. It's been really rewarding. So I commend you and Brandy on that effort because it's been really remarkable.
Well, thank you so much. And it was nice to see at the open meeting that we had so many people who attended that are engaged and on our email list and getting the information they need, because we need them to know what's happening. They need to be a part of this process.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But going back to the Catalyst Committee, so really if anybody watching has any ideas, of possible uses or people they know that may be interested, they're welcome to let us know, right?
Absolutely. It's a priority. And some of the good ideas we've gotten have come just from suggestions, either from committee members or people who aren't on the committee but might come to one of our meetings and make a suggestion or talk to a committee member about it. So yeah, the community has a huge amount of information and contacts, because sometimes you may say, well, it'd be great to do X, but if you don't know anybody who does it or anybody at a company that does it, it's hard to just call up and make a cold call and say, put me through to the president, I got a great idea about coming to Medfield. But if somebody has a connection, that's a great way to get get an audience, I guess, to be heard. So I think that is really important. One of the ideas that came up recently was from a woman who raised a special needs child through the town schools, and she was quite passionate about that and tied together so many of the things that are important at the hospital, the agricultural use, serving the same population in a way that was served by them originally. Really creative idea, and also a way to get some affordable housing credit too, because if you have a small number of them living in a group home there, you get to count every bedroom as an affordable housing unit. So what a great way to get some credit for affordable housing.
Yeah, it really fits so nicely, and like you said, very creative, and it comes from her passion. And
absolutely.
other people have their own
Yeah, it's something
Yeah.
nobody else on the committee had that kind of experience and that kind of passion. So we might never have thought of it if she hadn't come and
Right.
spoken, and it was great. So
It was, and it is, and it's, you know,
hopefully it'll
something
turn
exciting.
into something. Yeah.
Right, right. So there are certain constraints and limitations that the committee has to work with, and like we have the LDA, so that's the Land Disposition Agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you helped to put that together, actually. Yes.
Yes.
And then we also have a memorandum of agreement with the
Mass Historic Commission.
Historic Commission. So those are just a few of the constraints. So maybe you can talk about those a little bit, and if there anything else that needs to be taken into consideration that we really have to pay attention to.
Okay. Well, this could be a long list, so I'll try to keep it short.
Okay.
But, so, I mean, I think of them in different categories. So if you think about sort of some of the legal constraints, you've mentioned the two key ones in my mind, which is the Memorandum of Understanding with Mass Historic requires us to make an effort to keep the buildings and have them rehabilitated, preserved as part of a disposition plan if we're going to dispose of any of the property. And so the constraint there is that that adds an expense. I mean, I do a lot of historic tax credit work in my practice, and I just know that the budgets are always more because there's a lot you have to do to be sensitive to the historic character. There are also some resources like the historic tax credit that help pay for that, but I've heard developers say, it's barely worth it because the cost may be more. The increased cost may be more than the historic credit brings in. So it's a challenge, but one that the Historic District Commission, Mike Taylor, participates in a lot of our meetings, and he's sort of helped to guide us and give us his ideas about the buildings that are most important to preserve. So that's been helpful for us as well. And then the Land Disposition Agreement, the state disposed of this to us under this new model. We in the town of Westboro were the first two towns through the sales partnership model. And the state said, well, we'll sell it to you at a discounted price, but if you sell any of the land, we're going to split the profit with you. So we're cognizant of the fact that if we were to sell it, we'd have to give half the money to the state. So there are various incentives built into that where we can get a little more if we do certain things, which we're looking at. But overall, it's the sharing that's the key concept. But there are also other constraints, just infrastructure for one. The infrastructure up there is decayed. It's rather useless at this point and will have to largely be replaced. Roads will have to be put in if you're going to do any amount of development up there. And then zoning is a constraint. I mentioned we need a 2/3 vote, and a lot of developers, if they were to try to bid on a piece of the property, would want to know that it was permitted for what they want to do or what we're asking them to do. So it's going to be important to get the zoning in place before we try any kind of disposition so that we can eliminate the uncertainty there. And lastly, the uncertainty itself is a constraint. A number of the developers who came to our roundtable said that, well, one of the problems is going to be that if you do parcelize it and just sell some of it will be the concern, well, what's going to happen with the rest? So trying to articulate a vision for what will happen for the rest at the same time maintaining our flexibility may be one of our big challenges as well. So there are a lot of constraints up there, so it's tough to navigate through all those to try and come up with a plan that will be workable.
It takes time.
Time and creativity, that's the other
And
big
creativity,
thing.
and the good thing is there's
plenty of that
plenty
on
of
our
that.
committee.
Plenty
Yep.
of that. So how important is input from the community?
I'd say that's the most important thing we're dealing with. I mean, a lot of the constraints are there. We have to navigate them, but we need to get the buy-in. And I think it's more than just getting the approval. We just want everybody to be proud of what happens up there, and it's going to be there for a long time. It's a really high-profile place. I mean, I go up there and walk a lot, and there's always people up there. I don't think I've ever been up there where I haven't seen
more and
people.
more, I think, every day.
More and more every day. I mean, this was during the winter recently,
Incredibly
but
beautiful.
I'd still see people. But now, as it gets warmer weather, I think we're going to see even more participation. So we really want everybody in town to feel good about this and think it's a positive thing for the town. So the input is critical. It's not going to be possible to do everything for everybody, but at least we want to hear their concerns, and we want people to feel like we're addressing them and we're trying to come up with the best approach, but at the same time be flexible with the outcome, because it won't be what everybody wants. So.
The committee just had an open forum at the high school. So what, to just kind of keep people up to date, it's one of the strategies to make sure people know what's happening. What was the main message the committee wanted to get across at that open forum?
Well, I guess the biggest things that we designed it for were to let everybody know what we've been doing, so catch up the community with our efforts, but really encourage their participation, give them some insight into our thinking, and then try to map out what the next 6 to 8 months is going to hold for the town as far as our planning efforts and their participation. So it needs to be a collaborative process, and we're trying to get to a point where we can roll out some more specific plans. I think originally, I hesitated because I think originally the idea might have been that we actually would be presenting some more specific plans, but it's taken us a little bit longer to get there. I think the problem with the being more creative and trying to do something unusual is it doesn't fall into your lap as easily as if we were going to say, let's just sell the whole thing to a real estate developer and put in X, Y, and Z number of houses. So it's taken a little more time, and also we wanted to present a financial model because we've gotten a lot of input about what people would like to see, but one of the constraints is what can work. So the financial model has been a little more frustrating to get to a point where we can really begin to kick the tires on the financial side of scenarios. So we hope that'll come fairly soon. We've been working with our consultant to develop that financial model. But so the next round after this will be more geared towards some specific scenarios and some financial outcomes, so we can.
Which is really important, that balance, because
Right.
people can, I'd love this and I'd love that, but how much does it cost?
Right.
And I know, just I always hear, well, what's going on? What's happening? What is the committee doing? But the committee is working hard to do the best. I mean,
Right.
would you agree?
I would agree. I
Yeah.
would agree. And it takes some time. I mean, it's as nice as it would have been to do it in 6 months and be done and have a plan and go to town meeting. It was bound not to happen that fast. So we want to do it right. We want to do something the town's proud of. So if it takes a little longer, I think in the horizon we're talking about, it'll be time well spent. So
Absolutely, and I think people should feel encouraged. I don't know, again, what do you think? People will say, oh, I've heard, nothing, well, we'll never see anything happen up there. I disagree. What's your thoughts?
well, it is frustrating for people, especially if they're not involved in it week to week as we are. Because a fair amount of time has gone by, and people do get anxious about these kind of big projects, potential projects, is what's going to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty, so I can understand the reaction. So patience, unfortunately, is an important part of this. But as far as something happening, I'm pretty optimistic that it'll happen. And I think that's the other good thing about biting it off in smaller chunks, because I do think if you rolled out some huge plan, which would be hard to do because a lot of this stuff has to evolve over time, it would be a bigger challenge to get that passed. But I think if we bite off a small part of it, the problem with that is it may take more engagement with the town over a longer period of time if we just do part of it now and say, let's see what happens. But it'll be much easier, I think, to get something started if we don't try something too grandiose. So, so I'm optimistic that we'll get something going. The real estate market now, if you are going to invite in a developer to do some development work, the market's hot. It would be a good time to do something. So I watched in downtown Boston how the Fan Pier went through cycle after cycle of the real estate booms and busts, and nothing happened. It's hard to catch the market at a good time, but I think if we do something reasonably promptly, we can catch the current market at a good time, and something could actually happen in the fairly near term. So.
Something to look forward to. So in order for the master plan to be approved, right, we need this 2/3 majority at town meeting. So what do you think it's going to take to come up with a plan that 2/3 of the town will approve of?
Well, a lot more participation for one thing, but also I think on the townspeople's part, it is going to be important to realize that some consensus building compromise is important. I mean, I know in the current national political scene, compromise seems like a dirty word, but I think it's the essence of what we do. And no one's going to be appointed the dictator of the Medfield State Hospital to decide what's going to happen. Right. And so we all have to participate in that, and we all have to realize that we may not get everything we want. So I think that spirit of compromise and consensus will hopefully come through. But at the same time, our job is to listen and come up with something that we think will address as many concerns as people have without alienating people. So it is a balancing act. I mean, I think there are a lot of people who maybe don't have specific ideas, but they don't want their tax bill to go up by $1,000 a year. So I think we always have to keep that in mind as well. So, so being sensitive to those concerns and coming up with a plan that seems to address those and doesn't go over the top as far as the level of development up there, I think will be keys to success.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be a hot issue, housing and all of that.
Right.
And it's something that the committee's sensitive. Very sensitive.
Yeah, I mean, when you get a survey and the results come back and suggest that one of the top 3 priorities for people is housing, and then one of the top nightmare scenarios for people is housing, you say, how can these two things be the same?
And why do you think that was the case?
Well, I think a survey is limited in its usefulness in the sense that everybody's not sitting down and giving a half-hour interview, and so that you can then dissect exactly what their concerns are. So if people were thinking, well, housing might mean we sell the whole site to a developer and do a bunch of single-family housing, or we invite somebody in to do a bunch of high-rises like you might see over by Legacy Place. So there could be a lot of different things about housing that trigger an anxiety in people, and at the same time there does seem to be a strong consensus in town about senior housing, for instance, and maybe that means different things to different people, but in general the sense is that a lot of seniors, whether they're just baby boomers whose children have moved out, or people are getting older and can't maintain a big house, but they want other options. And by and large, Medfield is single-family homes, and most of the recent product, it's large single-family homes. So building some diversity that's attractive to seniors is a goal that seems pretty universal. The affordability part is a challenge because building $1 million nice townhomes for seniors is nice, but a lot of people won't be able to afford that.
Yeah, I don't think that's, and I don't think, I think people were more talking about a price point that is very, very affordable.
Right, because downsizing is presumably also means saving some money as well. So, and that's a challenge though, because the marketplace is driving high-end product, and so we need to be a little more creative and work a little harder. And it may be that we end up having to accept some high-end product in order to have a developer do some moderate price stuff, because we may have a hard time attracting a developer to say we want to put in 50 units of for sale senior housing for $300,000 a unit. We may not get anybody to bid on that because it just may not make any economic sense. But if on the other hand we said you could sell half at whatever price you want as long as the other half are sold at $300,000, then maybe somebody would be interested. So some of those creative approaches may be called for as well.
Right. Now, what do you say to the people who say that, we're just going to load up the state hospital with housing and development, and we're not going to leave any open space? And what do you say to people who feel that way?
Well, I think the message has come through pretty clearly on a lot of the surveys that I think almost everybody in town, and maybe not everybody, but almost everybody feels that having open space and town access to that is a pretty important virtue. Now, we do have the 2 big parcels on either side that the state continues to own and are required to be dedicated to agriculture or passive recreation. And across the line on the Dover side, there's some huge fields that they, so far, seem to be prepared to leave as they are. So there's already a bunch of open space around the campus, but even on the campus, keeping it open so people can walk up there and enjoy the views from up there. The views now with the new canoe launch
with
and
the
area are
gateway.
spectacular. Yeah, so
pretty.
so I think everybody on the committee has that feeling that they'd like to keep it as open as possible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the early responses from our consultant were that that may be a challenge because it may be a money loser, but I don't think we're willing to concede that, and I think we feel like if we take a first step, we may be rewarded that we can preserve a lot of the property up there as it is without having to develop it all. So, and development could be focused on the areas that are already developed. I mean, people when they walk up there, I don't think, maybe some do, but a lot of people are comfortable with the buildings and actually like the buildings up there. So if you can stick to at least those footprints, maybe preserve some of the buildings, I don't think it'll change the feel. There'll be more people and more activity up there, but I think the openness will be preserved.
Right. And activity and people are not a bad thing.
Not a
Don't
bad
have
thing.
to be a bad thing,
No, and in fact, a
Little
lot
life
of the creative uses that we talk about cultural activities, a restaurant or a farm-to-table restaurant, artist studios. There are a lot of interesting ideas that would be nice to pursue, but a lot of them require a certain level of people coming to the site. So if you've built some housing there, that brings a population with it already, and other people going up there to enjoy the property will help to create an environment where those kind of businesses can succeed.
Right.
Whereas if you said today to a restaurant, we want you to just go up and put a restaurant in the state hospital, they'd look at you like you were crazy.
Yeah,
Right? Who's going to
yeah.
come? So, so building that kind of community up there, I think, will be important to stimulating other types of things.
So it's really kind of a balance. The committee is really kind of trying to find that middle place, that middle ground
Right.
that makes the most people happy, the most people,
Yeah. As many people as possible.
as many
and-
people as possible.
Right, and hopefully virtually everybody. I mean, as I said, everybody won't be 100% satisfied, but everybody will feel good enough about it. We hope that,
Right.
that people will feel it's a positive contribution to the town.
So if you could say anything to the people who are watching us today about the process and the ultimate goal, or the ultimate, what the ultimate plan will be, what counsel would you give?
I think for me the number one thing is participate in any way you can, because the one thing I've seen happen at town meeting is a presentation will be made about some big project, and people come to the microphone and say, how come you didn't ask for our input, or I never heard about this, or I didn't know what you were doing. And that to me is the worst thing that can happen when you reach town meeting and you're trying to get support for something. So I really I would like, as an ideal, to be able to go to town meeting and have everybody at town meeting at least be familiar enough with this and have participated in some way so that nobody feels like they were left out of the process. So I think we're bending over backwards to provide opportunities for people so that if anybody hasn't participated, it's their own decision, and they can't come to the committee and say, oh, you should have listened to me. So we're trying to be as open as possible, so we really want people to take advantage of that, participate. And the second is, as I said before, have a spirit of compromise and realize that we have to make some tough trade-offs. I went through the constraints, and there are a lot of them, and we have to try and navigate that way through the constraints to reach a product that everybody will be happy with, but it won't be perfect. But take it in stride, take it with a grain of salt, and help us. If you have creative ideas, share them with us. If you have creative ideas for particular uses that might work up there, share those with us as well. So that's more than a word.
And keep the faith.
Keep the
Keep
faith.
the faith.
Right.
All right. Well, that was really great. Very helpful. I appreciate the time. You have given so much to the town. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for watching. Please, like Steve was saying, stay engaged with us. We have a Facebook page, MSH Vision. There is a website, which is www.mshvision.net. We have a weekly newsletter that you can sign up for. There's a multitude of ways that you can find out what's happening, and of course there'll be more shows on Medfield TV. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Medfield TV. Community shows.